What's up, everybody? It's Miguel. I'm coming at you from Quarry Lake. I wanted to get in depth with a little conversation with you guys, and have a little conversation about light. I was thinking about doing electricity today, but I changed my mind. So, I want to talk about light. So I think the average thing that people know about light is that it's a photon, and that our sun, which is a star, where is that? Right over there. Our sun, right over there, produces light. You can also get light from light bulbs and different types of electronic devices. LEDs and incandescent light bulbs and stuff like that. Fluorescent light bulbs. But in the same notion of electricity, I think that light itself is just, it's just one of those things that that is like glossed over. I doubt it's glossed over as you get higher into education, again, in the physics and all that stuff, that I doubt they would still be glossing it over. But as far as your average Joe is concerned, especially when it comes to middle school, high school, just average college, it's talked about as in, this is how light refracts. Light is a photon. This is the color spectrum. This is visible light. This is invisible light. I don't think you would say that. But either way, so there's like a whole spectrum of visible light that we can see, which is the different colors, and then there's light sources that we can't see, and then it's just like ends like that, and so it leaves a lot of questions. But the way it's presented to you, I think that initially you don't ask any of these questions. Just like electricity, you get the idea to how that electricity gets your electronics to work. And then you say, well, how electricity works, and then somebody explains to you how a motor works, like a induction motor, and so that's how electricity works. But that's not actually how electricity works. That's how they use electricity to get something else to work, but that's not how electricity itself works, in a sense. So that's what I'm saying about light. They say light comes from different objects as a photon, and then it bounces off that object and comes at you, hits you in the eye, and the light that you see is the ones that gets reflected. So the colors that you see is the colors that are reflected, and the rest of the colors, because we get from the sun, we get white light. So that includes it includes the whole spectrum of visible color. So when you see something green, that means that the photons bounced off that green object, came back with that green color, and then the rest of the spectrum, some oranges to blues to purples and all that stuff, gets absorbed by that object. And then they just like sort of end it right there, and then me growing up, that's all I knew. For the most part, it took me a while to find out about the rest of that stuff I just said. But for the most part, that's all I knew. And then, you start asking questions and stuff, you start finding out more. You find out that light isn't just like a photon type of thing. It's a electromagnetic wave. And that not only is light the visible light we can see, and the other ones that you might have heard of, like infrared and ultraviolet, but it also includes microwaves, radio waves, gamma rays, and I'm probably missing something. But that concept of those extra steps isn't presented to your average Joe. And I think that sucks, because then it starts to really get your mind going. It really starts to get your mind thinking about, what does this mean? How does this work? How does that affect other things? You know. So let me try to gather my thoughts here. So on that note, I've always wondered, or at least I started to wonder once I started finding out more and more about light, is that I haven't found this answer yet, is how or where is a quote-unquote photon? You know, if you see by seeing photons, where do these photons come from? Also, I thought about the idea that you could say possibly that it has something to do with an atom, which includes a neutron, a proton, and an electron. But if you think about it in the sense of, well, I can see a lightning bolt, and a lightning bolt is supposed to consist of nothing but electrons. Or you could see an arc, like if you like split a cable and the electricity jumps from one to the other cable. That's a arc. You can see the arc. You can see if you stick a plug in the socket halfway, you can see the jump of the electrons go. So that would, to me, say that you don't technically need the whole atom, you know, to be able to see light, because I can see the electricity jump. So then what does that mean? That gets into what I learned about heat. I'll be jumping all over the place. But it gets into what I learned about heat, in that heat transfer is between two different atoms. So one atom has to affect another atom, which affects another atom to transfer heat, right? So how would the light, if it's a photon itself, is it like just sitting there until it is agitated, like heat transfer is concerned, and then it's expelled in all different directions? Or does it have something to do with something else? And the only thing I could come up with so far is that, you know, from what I know, neutrons and protons are made up of quarks, right? Electrons are made up of nothing except for the electron. So what if the electron itself is the quote-unquote photon? So you're only calling it a photon because it's affecting your eyes. Other than that, it's still an electron. You know. So electromagnetic wave is created using electrons. If you use a induction motor, it uses a magnet and the coils to propel each other. It uses magnets that switch from positive to negative to push other magnets around in a circle, basically. And it has copper wire around it, so that while the magnets are transferring past each other, it produces electricity, right? And then that electricity goes down the copper wire. So that right there is electromagnetism. Just like, basically that's electromagnetism. And so if that is electromagnetism, and light is basically just an electromagnetic wave, then to me, it breaks down to being that light is just electrons. Pieces of electrons escaping an atom and then popping you in the eye. And that's another thing about electrons too, or at least your body is concerned. All your body transmits all its pulses to the brain using electricity. Some of it's like chemically induced and all that stuff like that, but it's electrical pulses, right? So if it is, let's say it's a photon, how would the photon itself affect the sensors in the back of the eye, right? But if it's an electron itself, it could pass through. Let's see, that electron itself could pass through all the layers of your body, as far as the eye is concerned, the lens and all that stuff, and then hit the back of the eye, giving an electrical pulse to that sensor, and that sensor passes onto your brain. And then also the fact that electrons travel around the nuclei in a certain way. So initially, I think people thought, or at least they wrote it down that way, is that you got the nuclei and then you have electrons and they're like just doing this, right? And then they went to, from just doing like a two-dimensional circle around that nuclei, it's become like a 3D type of thing, where it could be going that way or going this way or going that way. And then the last time I heard about it, I could be wrong. I could be making this up, so don't butcher me in the comments or anything like that. But it's not an electron doing, it's not orbiting around the nuclei. It's sort of waving back and forth around the nuclei, right? So there you go. So let's say, so the sun, right, is going through its whole it's going through its whole nuclear reaction, right? Creating, changing helium to hydrogen and all kinds of other stuff. But then while those things are being compressed and moving around, electrons start bouncing around, right? Electrons are bouncing all around and the sun. And I think it bounces, supposedly the light bounces around inside the sun for like a week or so, or a month. And then it's able to escape from not just solar flares, but other stuff. So that electron shoots through through space, doing this little wavy thing, right? Doing all of this, comes down here, hits an object, or hits my eye, hits an object, right? Let's say it hits this green right here. This leaf itself has atoms in it that are lined up a certain way so that it creates this leaf. It hits this leaf right here, and either, see, this is what I'm thinking. It hits this leaf, the electron hits this leaf, and then bounces back. And so it was already vibrating at a certain rate, right? It hits the leaf, transfers some of that vibration over to the leaf, right? Because of that, the leaf gets warmer. This is how heat works, right? So some of that energy transfers to this leaf, warms it up a little bit, but the electron also bounces back. It bounces in another direction. Because it can't sort of assimilate itself into the atom. It doesn't have any space for the electron to be. So it gets bounced off, right? It bounces off, comes back, hits me in the eye, and when it hits me in the eye, because of the energy transfer of the wave initially, the white light initially, well, it's not really white light. Well, I guess it is still white light by the time it gets to me. But either way, because the white light loses some of its momentum as far as its wave is concerned, when it bounces back to me, that wavelength drops down to the green wavelength that I see. Bam! So that's what I'm considering would be what's going on. I could be completely wrong about it. I could be partially right, but I don't know. And then the fact that photons are supposed to carry basically no weight at all, right? So a photon can push an object, depending on how many photons it is and how light the material is. So like if you ever saw Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, I think they had the space sail. It's not a space sail. It's called a light sail, whatever. But that's based off of actual technology that I think NASA has created at one point, and it is considering on using at some point in the future. So another thing that hardly has any mass to it, or no mass at all to it, is an electron. So that's where I'm at with light. I mean, to me, at the end of the day, if it's not something like an electron, that means there is a photon there. There's a photon there that is just sitting there for whatever reason with the atoms, right? Because you can't just like, at least I don't want to try to just make it out of anything. I mean, make it out of nothing. So it's got to be like with the atom or something like that. And then when the atom is agitated, I guess, then it releases the photon. It kind of, from my standpoint, it doesn't make that much sense that way. Is that the photon is something on its own, and that somehow it is produced, that the photon is produced and then shot somewhere. And then, like, what happens to the photon after it hits my sensor? Does it bounce back out my eye and go somewhere else? Do they just keep bouncing everywhere? I don't know. What do you guys think? Does my hypothesis sound all right? Does it make kind of any sense? Does anybody know better than I do about these photons and light sources and all? I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, let me know in the comments, or do a video. That'd be great. Do a response video on this. Let me know what you think about light. How does it affect you? If you had any questions of light in your past, things of that nature. And just to elaborate a little bit more. So when you get light bounce back and you see color, that's the light wave going and hitting you at a certain frequency. But then when you see black, you're not actually seeing anything at all. It's basically your eye is looking at something and it doesn't see anything. Your eye isn't stimulated by photons bouncing back towards you, and so it looks black. Yeah. And then when you see something white, that's all the frequency, the frequency, that's the complete frequency, basically. All colors combined. That kind of brings up a question too. So white light is several electrons waving at the same time? Or is it just one electron waving at a certain frequency, and then, as time goes on, it gets bumped down? I don't know. See, it kind of, I don't know. I mean, because if it's not that, then what is it, like a photon it's called a white photon or something like that? And then somehow You know, like what is that white? Is it a single white photon? Are all photons white? That would kind of make sense. Like all electrons produce just white, right? Initially, and then when it hits a certain frequency, it changes or it stimulates my eye to see a different color. And then when you get black, nothing actually bounces back to you. So it's interesting. Interesting. Well, anyway, that is it for today's vlog. I'm not moto vlogging right now. I do have my moto stuff and my bikes right over there, but I wanted to do this in front of the lake and get it in. But thanks for watching. I have a spider on my jacket. Look at that. I think that's a spider. But thanks for watching, checking it out. If you see me on the streets anywhere or near a lake, relaxing, make sure you shoot me a heads up display, and I'll catch you guys later. Give me a head nod. Up. There you go.